You know, there's nothing like cracking that cellophane and pulling that record out. It just smells great.
Welcome to Bod's Mayhem Hour.
Non-stop hardcore energy.
I love the show, guys. You're awesome.
Unlike any other.
With your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. The Bodfather.
Man, this stuff rocks.
The views and opinions of the guests do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Bod's Mayhem Hour, its staff, affiliates, or sponsors. Parental discretion is advised. Welcome to Bod's Mayhem Hour.
This is Annie Davis from Trashy Annie, and you're watching Bod's Mayhem Hour.
Hey everybody, welcome to Bod's Mayhem Hour. I am your host, John the Bod, aka the Bodfather, and as always, I'm bringing you guys and gals awesome interviews. Today, it's an honor and a privilege to welcome Annie Davis, aka Trashy Annie, and she has released her debut album entitled Sticks and Stones back in May of 2023 by indie powerhouse Cleopatra Records, and includes the award-winning song Something in the Water, and crowd favorites Bama, God Save the Queen, and Born Pretty. Sticks and Stones was submitted for Grammy consideration by the Recording Academy and continues to garner critical acclaim for Annie's innovative ability to blend story-driven country roots with heart-pounding rock and roll. And now she has released her vinyl of Sticks and Stones. So we're going to be talking to Annie about all this good stuff. So how you doing? And welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good. So how did this band and yourself get together? How did all this come together?
Oh man, it's been a hell of a couple of years. But basically the story is that so I was a trumpet player through college. I grew up welfare, food stamps, that whole world. And so I decided I needed to teach myself a skill to pay for school someday. And so silly me, I was like, oh, musicians, I need to be a musician. That'll definitely pave my way to financial success someday. And so I picked up the trumpet and started playing, taught myself to play. And I was 5th grade, I think, at this point, and ended up falling in love with it. And so put myself through school and eventually college on trumpet scholarship, and then got out of music, realized close to the end of college, I was like, what the hell was I thinking? I can't make any money as a musician, you know? And I not a lot of need for trumpet players in rock bands, right? So it was orchestra or be a band teacher. And I was like, I don't think that's my path. So made a big pivot, got into the business world, did some stuff on some completely unrelated to music. But anyway, came back to it during the pandemic and picked myself up a drum kit, because that's what it was Christmas of 2019. I bought myself a drum kit as my Christmas gift to myself, because I just had always really wanted to play the drums. And so bought a kit, started teaching myself to play and hit those things and have a little fun. And then the pandemic hit, and I thought, man, you know, I no time like the present to learn how to play some other instruments, and really had always had this fear of singing in front of people. I'd never done karaoke. I was terrified of the idea. There's a couple of things that have always scared me, and swimming was one of those things, and singing in front of people was one of those things. So early on in life, I learned how to swim. I ended up doing Ironman triathlons and things, because I was like, I'm going to teach myself how to conquer this fear, and I'm going to do the thing. And so I got through that. And so then it was kind of the same for me with swimming. With singing. I thought, I'm going to teach myself to play and write a song and kind of conquer this fear I have of singing in public. So during COVID, I bought a guitar and I started playing, and I taught myself one chord, and I wrote a song all with the one chord, because that's all I could play when I got going. Went out to an open mic, did the thing, and just fell in love with songwriting, and ended up just going kind of head first into it all, and got out of I was 44 at the time. So I just turned 48 this last month. So people are like, what the hell are you doing? You know, you're going to go and start a rock band in your mid 40s. Like, is that really what you're going to do? And I was like, you know, I think that's what I'm going to do. And so got going with it all and put this really awesome group of guys together. You know how it is. It takes a while to find the right fit. And I went through a ton of different people and different iterations of this band. But my current group is just amazing. And so I've got this crew together. We tour all over the place at this point. I'm signed to Cleopatra Records, which was in advance of that first album, like you mentioned, Sticks and Stones, that came out in May. And yeah, it's been kind of a whirlwind couple of years, but it's where I was meant to be. You know, as a kid, I I was consumed with music, and I played trumpet, and I would skip school and not do any of the cool. I wouldn't be smoking weed on the street corner. You know, I was playing my trumpet in the band room, like a goofball. So that was the thing that gave me so much joy as a kid, and to come back, full circle to all of it and do the thing I'm doing now just feels like the place I was supposed to be. So it's really cool to be back here.
But isn't it funny though, when you go away from your first love of your hobby, whatever it is, you always, for some reason, you come back to it, and it's like you said, it's full circle now, you know?
I know. And it's been cool because I think had I stayed in music back then, like I thought I was going to, and like I wanted to, I don't know that it would have had the same impact on me that it does now. You know, I have so much more to write about. I have so much more appreciation for what music is and what it provides me, not necessarily an amazing financial cushion, right? Because musicians aren't doing it for the money, but it fills my soul in a way that I'm not sure I would have appreciated in my 20s had I just stayed in music and kind of taken it for granted. Now I really, really appreciate it. So yeah, it has come full circle in a really cool way.
You released a CD out last year. How excited are you to release your debut album entitled Sticks and Stones now on vinyl for you?
Man, I got to tell you, I think this is the coolest thing to date that I've done. I mean, standing on a stage for the very first time and playing a show was a big moment. And, I've talked about this with people that are close to me. You don't get a lot of firsts in your life when you start getting into your, late 40s. You have to kind of embrace those moments and say, man, this is a really cool thing to get to experience something for the first time when I'm, at this age. And so for me, standing on the stage was a really cool first thing. And I was so nervous, and it was a big moment. But I think also opening my box of vinyl for the first time and realizing that was music that I wrote, and now I have an album with my stuff on it. It was equally as cool a moment for me, because I remember as a kid sitting on the floor in our little house in Battleground, Washington, listening to my mom's albums. And, I was a little tot. I was like 5 years old, just sitting there in my little dress on the cold ass floor in the winter, listening to the turntable. And I used to come home after school and listen to Simon and Garfunkel and James Taylor and all kinds of stuff, Willie Nelson, all the old country guys. My mom was from Texas, and so I would listen to all of that too. And it just means something to me that's kind of visceral. And so, yeah, I think having stuff on vinyl there's just something really cool about it.
So how big of a statement is this for you, if any?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hopefully the first of many, right? So this is probably the thing that I've most looked forward to, aside from, playing good sized shows and big audiences. I mean, that's something that obviously from the beginning I was like, okay, this is what I want to be doing with my musical career. But having vinyl out there and having an album that I'm super, super proud of, because I think it turned out really well, that's a big moment. And then the name of the album. So I'll kind of give you the backstory and on the band name and the name of the album, because there's a little bit of a history to that. So like I said, I'm 48 at this point. When I started this thing, I was 44. So when I released my first song, which was actually that one chord song called Runnin' that I had written, and I decided that I wanted to learn. Being a trumpet player, I didn't know anything about the production world, or I didn't even know what an XLR cable was. I didn't know anything. And so learning how to write a song, sing a song, produce a song, how you mix a tune, and what happens in the studio, and, the dark arts of mastering, what even is that, and then beyond that, how do you get it out on Spotify? How do you, let people know about your music? How do you make a music video? How do you start a YouTube channel? There was just so much. And so for me, getting from zero to the point of having a song out in the world, making a music video for it, all of that there was a lot of vulnerability in that, for one. But two, it was just a lot of work learning how to do all of those different things myself. And again, this is full pandemic. And so there's no one to really help me or get together and make a music video. People are locked in their houses doing their thing. So I made this music video myself to go with this song that I had just released. And I was, it's just me in a bunch of floofy dresses and my iPhone out in the country where I live, making this homemade little DIY music video. But I was really proud of it. And I put it out into the world, and I released the song under my name, Annie Davis. And the first damn comment that I get on this thing, after all of the blood, sweat, and tears and vulnerability and scariness of putting this thing out in the world, is this lady getting on there talking about my clothes being too young for me. And I was like, oh, this breaks me, after all this stuff out in the world. So what came of that, though, is that after I mended my little broken heart from somebody being so mean for no real reason, I decided to name the band Trashy Annie, because I said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to wear what I want to. I don't care what age I am, as everybody should be able to do. And so that's where the band name came from. So to answer your question, the long answer to, how big a statement is it to get this album out there? The album itself. So I screenshotted after that comment from that lady. I was like, this is going to be an ugly world, this social media thing. So I can either, be afraid of it and let people hurt me, or I can, it's a laugh or cry situation, right? So I choose laugh. So what I did was I ended up screenshotting all these mean things people had said to me on social media, and I made that the back of the album art. And so I just did a little, clip on social media yesterday, kind of talking people through. And here's a comment from so-and-so saying this is a stupid and offensive name. And here's a person, here's a comment saying this and that. So that's all of the back album art. And then the front of the album is, again, the album's called Sticks and Stones, and it's just a big glittery middle finger. So I feel like it is a work of art for me, but it's also a statement, to my life, just saying, listen, I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to do the thing that I feel I was meant to do. I don't give a shit about what other people think about it, especially when it comes to how my age impacts my art. Like, they shouldn't have anything to do with each other.
No.
Yeah. So I guess that's to answer your question. I think it's a big statement for me for a number of reasons, but I'm really proud of it.
There's always somebody. There's always going to be somebody that's going to run their mouth regardless of what you do. And those people can just fuck off. And that's what I say about my podcast. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but if you like what I'm doing, hey, that's great. If not, that's great. I'm going to do it anyway. I like doing this. So fuck them.
Good for you. And that's how we all should be, and I hope that we inspire other people to do the same thing, because we should all be walking our own path in this world, and stop worrying so much about what everybody else thinks about it. If you're not hurting anybody else, why in the world would you care what other people think about what you're doing? So yeah, good on you. I love that you're doing it too.
So what was the reaction knowing that Cleopatra Records wanted to release this album on their record label?
I mean, that was a huge moment, right? Because you've heard horror stories about labels. If I'm new to the music industry, now it's been 4 years or so, but still relatively new and still learning a lot. And so when they approached me, I was like, holy shit, like this is a really big deal, and this is really cool. So yeah, I was really proud, and I still am. I'm still really proud. That label has been around since the early 90s, and they're very supportive of independent artists, and that's kind of where their world lives. I mean, they're trying to support indie people like me that are, trying to figure it out. And there's so much to learn. I mean, I know just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to how to promote music and get it out to the masses if you don't have a big marketing machine behind you or bajillion dollars to put into your stuff. I mean, so there's a lot to learn still, but yeah, it's really cool to be, looked at in a professional way by a label, and for somebody else to say, yeah, you have something that we're interested in investing in. That's a definite source of pride for me, for sure.
Did the album turn out exactly the way you wanted it to?
I think it turned out better than I thought it was going to. I have the coolest team behind me. I mean, I wrote everything. But I've got this group in Arizona that I work with, a guy named PH Nafa, who was the drummer for a band out of Arizona called Roger Klein and the Peacemakers. They're still very active and touring and doing the whole thing, but they used to be called the Refreshments back in the day. They do the theme song to King of the Hill and a bunch of stuff that you'd be like, oh yeah, I know that song, especially from the kind of the 90s hits that they had. So anyway, the drummer from that band, and then another really cool guy who's just an amazing engineer and multi-talented musician named Jeff Lusby Brault. So those are my guys. I go out to Arizona and I take my song ideas and I say, hey, this is kind of the way I think it sounds to me and my arrangement. And, I've done what I can to, hack through it and figure out the chords with my limited guitar skills and everything that I think belong here. What do you guys think? And they've just got great ears. And I think they're really good. We work so well together because they're not afraid to tell me when they think something needs to change, or when they think I need to maybe even change a chorus melody or a note here, a note there. And especially when I first started, there was a lot of that. My second song, which is on Sticks and Stones, Nuclear Meltdown, that was the first song that I did with this group of people. And that's an entirely different song than the way I originally wrote it, because we sat down and we hacked it up and we reworked it and we rearranged it. And I think it came out so much better than I really ever thought it could. Now, fast forward a couple of years, my songwriting skills are better, my arranging skills are better. So we don't need to do as much of that. I mean, last time I went to the studio, we tracked 14 tunes because they were pretty well put together. But that's all the long way to say, you got to have a team. So if you've got the right team, I think your stuff ends up coming out better than you anticipate. At least for me, it did, because I feel like I've got the right group behind me now.
What led the track Knock Knock to be the first song released off the album? What was it about that one that said, let's put this one out first?
That one, I wrote it during the pandemic, and it's very simple at its core. There's not a lot of complicated chords or anything to it. But to me, as a songwriter and as a creative in general, I've got a lot of shit bouncing around in my head all the time. Keeps me up at night, keeps all of us up at night. You know how this is. So I think Knock Knock to me sort of embodied what I was going through and what a lot of people went through during the pandemic, where we were feeling isolated and a little bit scared about what was going to happen with the world. And, were things going to go back to normal, and all the demons and things kind of chasing you around at night in your head. That's what that song is about. And so for me, it made sense to make that the lead out single for the album, because it was so timely in its message. So, and I also was just really proud of that tune. I actually did a bunch of that song. I recorded it in Nashville. So I did 90% of the album with my guys in Arizona. But before I had reconnected with them after Nuclear Meltdown, I went up to Nashville and did a couple of tunes with some really cool guys up there. Roger Miller, who's Dean Miller, who's Roger Miller's son from the Country Music Hall of Fame, that guy, the King of the Road guy. His son helped produce that tune, Knock Knock, and he and I did that production of that song together. And then we had some cool guys up there in Nashville that played on that tune, and then my guys in Arizona mixed it and kind of helped with some of the other overdubs and things. But so it was a kind of a collaborative approach to that song, and so I just love how it came out. I think it's a cool tune.
Are you still experimenting with your music, or are you just still pushing that envelope?
Nah, man, I think I like so many types of music. I like everything from singer-songwritery stuff to super hard rock. So I think I'm hoping that my music never becomes sort of pigeonholed into one thing, because I like too many types of music to sit down and feel like I just have to write the same thing over and over, and I know there's a lot of variety within rock and roll, but I also still really have kind of a country. Sometimes I call the music, or the fans have called the music, rock and roll with a country soul, because it's packaged in a rock, rapping, but at its core, it's got a lot of storytelling to it that kind of comes from my country roots and, Texas and where I live and what I'm around. I'm around a lot of country music here. And I also really like singer-songwriters, and they're always sort of storytellers at their core. And because I listen to some of that stuff, it works its way into even my rock music. So yeah, I hope that I don't ever go down one specific road. I think rock and roll is sort of where my heart lies more than anything. But I also like a lot of different kinds of music. I mean, I wrote a rap song. I wrote there's just other stuff out there that I'm kind of working through and making sure it's good enough to put out in the world. But I like to write a lot of different things.
But see, you said the key word there. It has to have that core storytelling. It has to tell that story, regardless if it takes you on peaks and valleys. There's still got to be that story that goes to the next song.
I think so, especially for me, because I think a lot of people who write music are musicians first and maybe lyricists second, or maybe they're, really great guitar players, kind of their main thing. For me, the lyrics are my main thing. I mean, that's what I have to contribute, right? I'm still learning how to sing. I'm still learning how to play guitar and drums and all these other things. But I surround myself with people where that is their first best use. And my first best use is writing the lyrics. And you combine us all, and we're Voltron, right? With our powers combined. So it's just I think that for me, that's why storytelling as in the music becomes so important, is because that's what I have to give. And that's the thing that I enjoy. I enjoy crafting lyrics in a way that I hope is compelling for people to think about. I think it's kind of the thinking man's rock music is sort of what I write. And I like that about it. So yeah.
I want to go back here just for a little bit, because you work with your team in Arizona plus in Nashville. Has both of these factions pushed you to your limits? Have they got something out of you that maybe somebody else might not have gotten, possibly, that you feel comfortable working with?
Definitely. I think less so in Nashville. I really enjoyed working with those guys in Nashville, but Nashville is a whole different world. You go up there with your music and you better hope it's pretty ready, and there's not much pre-production that happens. There's not much like, hey, let's think about this chord. It's more, I'm going to find the best musicians in this town. We're going to put them in a room. We're going to have 30 minutes and we're going to run through this tune twice and hope that it comes out the way that you want it to. So that's kind of the business of Nashville, right? Which has its place in the world. I kind of appreciate that because things go fast. You've got if your song is well written and well arranged, it's going to be back to you in a month and you're going to be ready to release that sucker. You go with the other side of the fence, which is kind of more what I enjoy actually. And what I have with my Arizona team is we sit down, we woodshed, we tear it apart, we break it back, we put it back together. We try some different things. Maybe we don't like these drums and we put another, we need to do another take in a month and fix it, or I go back and I redo my vocals or whatever. So stuff comes out at the end closer to maybe there's ideas that come out of that process that I didn't have initially. Whereas Nashville, hopefully everything's kind of ready to go. So they both have their benefits. I think they both stretch me in different ways. My preference at this point in my career and my life is doing things the way I do in Arizona, where I trust them to tell me if something doesn't sound good to the ear, because then we'll fix it,
What's the growth musically you've seen from yourself working on this album that impresses you the most moving forward with more releases from you?
I think it's a good question. I think more than anything, I mean, I'm learning and growing in so many areas of this whole thing, because I have to learn more chords on the guitar. I have to, or I'm going to write the same country song over and over again for the rest of my life, So there's a lot that I have to learn, and am growing on the musical side of things. And my band is so awesome because they're super patient with me and they teach me things and they help me and they say, hey, try this method and, work on this for a little while. So that helps me grow on the musicianship side. I think the place where I'm most proud of myself is feeling like I truly enjoy being on the stage now. And I was so afraid of it. I was so fearful of the whole concept. When I went to that first open mic, it was at a place called New World Deli in Austin. It was one of the few places that was still kind of doing some stuff during the pandemic. And I was shaking when I got up there, and I was only playing, they gave you 3 songs and I had 1 song. So I had 1 song and I told a joke for my second one because I didn't even have more than that. I couldn't stand up and play guitar at the same time. I didn't know I was supposed to have a strap for my guitar. So I'm trying to hold this thing on my lap as it's sliding down my lap while I'm trying to play my tune. It was so nerve-wracking. I had never sung into a mic before. I didn't know what that was supposed to be like, which is a whole different world. So I think fast forward now, and we just played a awesome run of gigs. We tour kind of all over the place, and we just played it at City Winery in Nashville, which is a huge ass deal venue, and we played to these rooms of people out in Savannah and Hilton Head and Atlanta, these badass venues where you see people's pictures on the wall where you're like, holy shit, like you played here, these huge bands. So anyway, I think now to feel like I'm comfortable on the stage and I'm learning how to be a performer when I was so afraid of that. It's the same type of feeling I had, like I mentioned earlier, when I was afraid to learn how to swim and I ended up doing Ironmans, and then I got across those finish lines. It was like, I did this. I taught myself this, and I'm not afraid of it anymore. And I think conquering fears is the most empowering thing you can do in this world for yourself, So I think that's the thing to answer your question. That's what I feel most proud of, is my ability to enjoy being on the stage now.
How's the feedback been on the release of these singles and this album? What are you seeing, man, that's fueling your fire now?
I've gotten really, really good feedback, and that makes me really proud because of how much time and effort and how meticulous we were when we put this thing together. And again, the guys in Arizona, especially, like, they weren't going to let me release something that wasn't good. And so I've gotten a lot of really good feedback. You mentioned it got submitted for consideration with the Grammys, which is really cool that anybody would even, consider putting us into the mix. I mean, you're up against huge people, right? So I have no expectations of it going anywhere, but just the idea that it was even submitted and that people, that are at that level are listening to my music is really cool. And then one of the other really amazing things that came as a result of this album is that I got a call from a guy named Tommy Price, and Tommy Price is a drummer that has been Joan Jett's drummer for 40 years. He played with Billy Idol on Rebel Yell and toured with him, and is on all kinds of huge hits that you'd be like, holy shit, that's the drummer for X, Y, and Z. So anyway, he called me up after hearing Sticks and Stones and said, I want to write an album with you. And I was like, holy shit, you're Tommy Price. You want to write with me? And I walked into a studio for the first time. It's like, there is no wall space that doesn't contain a platinum album or some award of some kind. I'm like, holy shit. So I find myself sitting in these kinds of situations, and it's all just so surreal because I think I'm just, just little me that started picking up this guitar. But I love it, and I work at it every single day for hours and hours a day. And that's how you get opportunities like this. You work at it and you throw the net as wide as possible, and you see what comes of it. So yeah, I think the feedback has been really, really good, and the opportunities that are coming as a result of all the hard work that went into that sucker, I think are pretty amazing as well. And I'm really proud of it all.
For sure. For sure. Again, it comes back full circle. It's a whole full circle deal. Was there a track for the album that totally ended up sounding different than what it was intended to? Is there one that kept changing or no?
Something in the Water, which is this tune about escaping a cult. So I love the lyrics to that song. And when I first wrote it, it was real stripped down. I just wrote it on acoustic, and it still kind of translates pretty well to an acoustic song because it's a little creepy and real minory. I actually won a songwriting award for that tune. And so it always has appealed to me. The direction that we took it in the studio was so different, not because we changed the arrangement or the chorus or really anything, but just the way that we wrapped it up with sonically, the kind of the way that we put it together. It turned out so much different than what I thought it was going to be, but also really cool. And I still think there's a place. I always told the guys, I was like, listen, I want this song to be meth. I don't want it to be opium. I don't want it to be this like loungy, groovy tune. I want it to be like, holy shit, we're escaping the cult. Oh my God. Which is not kind of really how it came out. So I still think there's a place for that song to be kind of a hardcore kind of edge of your seat runaway train meth kind of song. But the way that it came out is also just really cool in its own right. So I think that was the one tune that came out a little different than I expected, but not in a bad way, just in a wow, that's cool. I'm not sure that that's what it would have been in my head until we got it into the studio.
Any songs that didn't make this album that you kept back for a later release, EP, or something down the road, maybe?
Yeah, we tracked, I think, I want to say 15 songs, knowing that I was going to pick and choose. And it wasn't even that the songs that didn't make the first album weren't songs that I kind of wanted them on the first album, but for time's sake, I knew I was going to press vinyl. So you're sort of limited with how long the thing can be if you want to get everything onto a vinyl and still have it sound good. So I knew that was going to be an issue. And I'm a fan of bands putting together albums that take you sort of on a journey. And so for me, the songs that made the cut for this album, it wasn't because they were better or worse or, whatever. It was that they fit together in a way that I feel like takes fans, you've got some big rock tunes at the beginning, and then you go down into a really cool version of Drift Away, which I think turned out really great. Dobie Gray song. And then it comes back and you get the Something in the Water and the kind of creepy revival vibe. And then we go into a little bit of sort of lovey-dovey country kind of vibe. And then we end it with Last Song, which is, I think, kind of a big Nashville-y kind of country-ish tune. So it takes people on sort of a journey. And I think the songs are so different from each other that you don't feel like you're just listening to same by the time you get to the end of the album. And that's why I chose the songs I chose. So there are several tunes that are going to be on this next album simply because I think they fit better with the group of tunes that are about to come out than the ones that came out already.
Look, I know these are your babies. I understand that completely, but any track standing out more to you than any right now on this album?
Well, yeah, there's a couple, and I hate to give away the punchline, so I won't tell you too much about what the tunes are about, but I've got a song that's kind of in a little bit in the country rock world called Sugar that has been pretty popular with people. It's a love song, but kind of not really. And then there's a song called Jake that is going to be a lot of fun. That's kind of got a little bit of a Chuck Berry kind of rock vibe to it. And then there's actually two other songs that'll be on this next one called Here We Go. And then the other one's called Games We Play. And those are just big, heavy rock songs. And I think of everything that's going to be on this next, although I don't even know. I mean, there's one that Tommy and I wrote together called Run Run. That's this cool, fast punk song that I just think is so much fun. And we've played at these clubs where there's a bunch of college kids and they just freaking love that song. You know, when they're like, when a mosh pit breaks out to your music, you're like, oh yeah, this is cool. So it's, I don't even know. I don't know. I have some favorites, but I think I think it's going to be similar to Sticks and Stones, where I think it's going to be a pretty solid album all the way around. And we'll probably have some songs that get pushed to the next one because we did the same thing this time that we did last time, where we tracked plenty of tunes. So we've got some to pick and choose from. So some will roll over to the next one. And then Tommy and I are writing a whole album together. So that'll be another album that comes out either later this year or early next.
Is the track listing placement important for your album or EP releases or no?
I think so. I mean, I put it's like building a set list. I think set lists are so important. I spend a lot of time building and crafting my set list because I want people to stay engaged. I want them, again, I want to kind of take them on a journey, like I mentioned, and I don't want them to get bored. I want them to listen and be engaged and take them from, a big crazy rock song to a little sweet love song back to something creepy over to something, just kind of keep them, because we're in this ADD world now, right? Where everybody streams and they're like, if you can get them to listen to more than 30 seconds of anything, you've won, right? And so I feel like getting people to listen to a whole album, top to bottom is a struggle, no matter how good the music is. And so for me, that's all part of the process, is really coming up with like I say, kind of like a set list. So it flows well and it takes people from one to the next in kind of a seamless way. So yeah, I think track order really does matter.
So what's been your toughest or your best song in your opinion that you've written before?
I can tell you I have two. I have two favorites. One of them is Bama. And Bama is about, it's especially from a woman's point of view. You meet a lot of people at shows and in clubs and out in the world that are like, I love you. I love your music. It speaks to me. You're all the things, let me take you home, whatever it is, and my answer is, I love you too. Please buy a CD so that I can eat tonight. Like put your love in the motherfucking tip jar. Right. So that's the line in Bama that is usually a pretty good hit with the audiences, but also it speaks to musicians and bartenders and anybody who's ever worked for tips. Like we all get that mentality. So Bama's one of my favorites. And then the other one that I like probably more than anything is called Born Pretty. And Born Pretty, I've got a little video I did. I make all my own music videos. So I've got one for that on YouTube. And it's one of my faves because it's about a girl who has a glass eye and little bitty titties and a limp and greasy long hair and all the things. And then the line in there says, the boys making noise every place I'm at saying, girl, how you make it with a face like that? How do you make it, girl, in this big bad city? And I guess I got lucky. I was born this pretty, so it's all about her just being totally okay with herself, no matter what, and kind of going through this world, doing the thing, regardless. And so it's kind of the Trashy Annie anthem, right? It's sort of what we're about as a band. And so I love that tune probably above all others on the album. But yeah, also Bama is a close second.
I gotta know this though. Does it still give you the same feeling today when you hit the stage as it did the very first time? Does it still hit you hard with the chill bumps and everything on that?
Yes, not the same in the sense that I used to have 4 shots of whiskey to walk up there. Now I'm like, okay, now I can't drink because I don't want to forget my lyrics, you know what I mean? But I used to have to, I used to have to imbibe before I got on the stage because I was just so nervous. It was ridiculous. And so now the nerves they're not completely gone, because I think if the nerves are completely gone, you've sort of reached a place of complacency. And I hope that that's never the case. I hope I always have a little bit of jitters in a good way. But I've done so many shows now that it's sort of, the jitters have sort of made way for excitement and joy. And I also have such a great band. I mess up all the time. We all mess up all the time. Like
Yeah.
it's music, right? Like we don't do backing tracks. We don't do anything. We just are out there making organic music that sometimes has mistakes. But you know what? My guys cover for me. We were doing a brand new song the other day at a show, and we had never done it before. And it's this cool tune that Tommy and I wrote together. And I fucked that thing up 10 ways from Sunday. I missed the pre-chorus. I came in late on that. But you know what? My band covered for me so well that the audience had no idea. And they came up to me afterward. We love that song. Where do I find that one? Are you kidding me? So anyway, it just, having the right people around you makes the whole experience so much more fun, even when you mess up, because they're your friends and we're just up there having a great time, and it's music, for God's sakes. Like, it's okay that it's not always perfect. It wasn't meant to be like that. It's art. So yeah.
And especially like songs you write, and you know specifically what they're written for. But say like me, I take one of your songs and I just incorporate it in my theory of what it is, and I run with that. That's the beauty of music, man. That's so cool. You're like, to find out this saved my life, or this helped me through a dark time, or this gave me inspiration to do whatever. But yet that
Yeah.
song's totally different from what you wrote it about.
I love that. I mean, I have people ask me all the time what my songs are about, or what does this mean? And my answer is always, what does it mean to you? Because what it means to me probably isn't what it means to you. And I don't want to impart my thoughts about what the tune is, because when I listen to music, it means something to me in whatever way whatever it means is internal to me. And I love that. And I don't even sometimes want to know what something is about when the writer wrote it, because it's a personal thing and it connects us in a way that, art is such a cool thing in the way that it connects humans together. And it's not always for the reasons we think. And so I'm with you. I love that, something that I write might mean something entirely different to you, but it means something. And that's what I strive to do. When I think about my music, I want it to mean something to people. And I don't care what that is. I don't care if the feeling that they feel is sadness or happiness or or anger or any of it. I just want them to feel something. Because, if I've done that, if I've caused somebody to listen to my music and feel an emotion, then I've done something right, at least in the way that I look at this whole thing.
So now we're going to get to know Annie, just about her stuff that she likes. So we're going to find out some info on her, folks. So Annie, if you could write an album equivalent to your favorite band's album, which album would that be?
Oh, that's so hard. I don't know if I have a favorite band, but I will say that I got to see the Eagles. I just learned that it's not the Eagles. 48 years into my life, I learned that it's not the Eagles, which is fucked up, but okay, Eagles. So I only learned it because I bought the t-shirt and I'm like, wait, they're just called Eagles. And it was a whole thing I had to research. And I was like, so anyway, but I just got to see them. They came through Austin on their farewell, the long goodbye, whatever their tour's called. That's super sad sounding. It's like the farewell to a long goodbye, whatever it is. Anyway, but they came through and they started their show where the whole stage went black, and then everybody was across the front, and the lights came up under each one of them, like the bottom stage lights, and they went into Seven Bridges Road, like all a cappella, everybody across the front. And I mean, the chills that I got, I have not experienced that at very many shows that I've been to. So I think Eagles are one of the greatest bands of all time. And I think that they're, whether you like them or don't like them, just appreciating what they've done as a band and the breadth of music that they've written that is, it doesn't all sound the same. It's got amazing harmonies. It's got great songwriting. Like I say, even if it's not your cup of tea, you got to appreciate what they've done. So I think they're one of my favorites just because of how much they've written that I remember listening to as a kid and just being so impressed with. But there's just so many. I mean, I like so many kinds of music. I used to listen to a lot of NWA and Eminem and like the rap and hip hop stuff, went through that stage. And then I swing back over to the singer songwriter stuff. And, then I'm listening to, I was on a big K-Flay, jaunt for a while. So I'm kind of all over the place with my music, but some of those bands from the 70s and 80s are just so amazing because they stood the test of time and they've written so much that's been so good.
Oh, for sure. And I'm a big guitar solo guy, and Eagles, Hotel California, I don't care. Everybody's like, is that the only song you know? No, that's not the only song that I know by them. But that song and that guitar solo, if it doesn't captivate you and grab your attention to say, I want to pick up a guitar, nothing in this world ever will musically.
And can you imagine, writing a solo or writing a song that has as big an impact on the world as a tune like Hotel California? I mean, everybody from 8 to 88 knows that song. And I mean, what a cool thing to have impacted that many lives with that and have so many guitar players, learn your music as a way that makes that fulfills them. I mean, what a cool thing. So yeah, that's awesome.
If you could be a member in an iconic band and play one of their legendary shows, what band would it be and what show would it be possibly?
Oh my God.
I'm breaking them in.
I don't have a good answer for that. I would play any show with Joan Jett that I could ever get on. I don't care if she's playing a fucking coffee shop. That woman is amazing, and it's not just because I know Tommy. I loved her my entire life. It's like, God, she's a fucking legend. I bring her up in one of my songs because I love her so much. And so, I think that would be my answer. I don't care. We could be busking on a street corner. That'd be my dream gig. Just give me Joan Jett. She's amazing.
What's been your most memorable show that you've been a part of that you still can't believe to this day that you're standing on stage singing?
We played, in fact, it was my very first tour. So it was my previous iteration of my band, one of the previous iterations. I finally have a band that I think is going to stick because these guys are amazing, but it's taken a while. So one of my previous iterations, we had a fan. So I had a guy that had been following my social media stuff since I started when it was just me and my guitar and my one chord song. And he ended up at an open mic that I was playing at in Denver, Colorado, which he lives in Hilton Head and I live in Austin. So the fact that we ended up in the same room at the same time in Denver, Colorado was kind of a weird thing. But he said, you got to come out to Hilton Head Island because they really appreciate original music out there. And it's been a struggle because, Austin, like a lot of other cities, is sort of inundated with cover bands and tribute bands and things now. So breaking through with original stuff is tough. And rock and roll, especially. And so he said, you got to come out to Hilton Head. So I said, all right, we'll try this. I'd never toured. I barely even knew how to book gigs at all. So I ended up booking this gig at this place that was at the time called Corks. And it was in Bluffton, South Carolina. And my guitar player and I, at the time, we trekked all the way out there. It's like 16 hours out there, brought our gear with us. We subbed, I think we might've brought a drummer, and then we subbed a bass player who had never heard any of the songs. So we're on this awesome little stage at this bar that's probably like a 200 capacity place, but it's this really cool little joint. And we're getting ready to sound check. And it's like probably 2.5 hours before the gig. And all of a sudden, these people all start filing in. And the guys that were there helped setting up. So they're like, oh, we're trying to set up for the band. They said, yeah, we're here for the show. And we're all kind of looking around like, us? That like trashy, like, who we are? Like, we're not, nobody's ever heard of us before. We're just here. And sure as shit, that night, we probably had 250 people crammed into a 200 cap room, spilled out the door, lining the street, waiting to get in when somebody else left. And I didn't even know. I mean, I barely even had enough music for. We had I think it was a 2-hour set, like two set. I don't think I had quite enough music for that. We were having to stretch out solos and like make it work. I will never forget that show because it was the first time where I was like, wow, people really like what we're doing, and somehow they heard about us 1,000 miles away from our hometown. And so we've been going back out there ever since. And that was kind of our first hub for touring, and started branching out from there. And now we've got a whole loop that we do out east. We have a whole loop we do out west. We go up to the Northeast for the first time in April, and we're making it all work. So I think that first touring stop with all of those people crammed into that room, just it was pretty amazing.
See, that's when you know, regardless if you're on social media, you got a YouTube channel, whatever. I know people hate Spotify, but I mean, my God, if you're getting the hits and results, I mean, that's what it's all about. I know you want to make money. I get that. But
Yeah.
the moral of the story is getting your shit out there.
Get your
And
shit
then
out
when
there.
you have, yeah, and when you have those people lining up that, you know, to come see you that far, it's like, that's got to be a surreal feeling like, holy shit, my music is actually hitting people.
Never felt anything like it because, you know, we've had shows like that since, but that was the beginning of it all. And that was the first time because I had only been playing largely by myself or as a duo in the, you know, corner of a coffee shop somewhere. This was the first time we had, you know, we had a cover and it was a real stage with real sound and all the things. And I was like, holy shit, who are all these people? And they're, you know, all at the front of the stage just jamming out and rocking out with us and having the best old time. And I mean, the energy in that room that night, I was like, this is why people do this. And it spurred me on to do so much of what I've been doing. I will always say, if we ever make it actually big, which I sure hope we do, I will always say we got our start at Corks in Bluffton, South Carolina. And we just played a show a month ago out at that place at their new venue, and they took us all out to breakfast, and they all put us up when we go out there, and they just treat us like kings and queens, and they're just some of my favorite people out there. So it's just such a great venue and such a great group of people, and I'll never not appreciate them, you know, at this visceral level. So I do want to say though, just because I think it's an interesting topic, you said a lot of people hate Spotify. I wrote a whole post that I knew I was like, I'm going to be the least popular musician, you know, on the planet for this viewpoint. But, you know, it was around the time that everybody was putting their Spotify Wrapped numbers up, you know, around the holidays, like they do, like, oh, I had so many listeners. And then everybody starts bitching about how they didn't get paid anything for all these streams. And so I was like, okay, you know, I feel, because I come from the business world, in between doing music, I went and started a business, and, you know, that's where the world I come from, back into the music space. And so I had to put my business hat on for a minute and be like, listen, you guys, you know, Spotify is not a revenue source. Spotify is a marketing tool, and it allows all of us to get our music, especially all of us little peons in this industry, out to people that would never in a million years have found our music otherwise. So yes, do we get paid for it? No. And sure, should Spotify, you know, pay more than 0.003 cents per stream? Maybe. But you know what? I've never seen their P&L. I don't know what they make as a company. I don't know how much goes out to all the different places that they have to pay, and all the employees they have to pay, and all the artists they have to pay. I don't know what their numbers are. So I'm not going to speak to how much they should be paying us. But I will tell you that 20 years ago, musicians did not have this kind of ability to get their music out to the entire world. I mean, we have people in Poland streaming our music in their restaurants because of Spotify. You know what I mean? Like, that is not, it's such a path forward for people to get ears on their music that, you know, back in the day, you would have had to hope that somebody comes across your record in a record store, or maybe you can pay enough to the radio stations to play them. I mean, to get thousands of people every month listening to your music, you know, appreciate Spotify. If you want to shit on them, fine, but appreciate the opportunity you're also getting as a result of what they do. Because there's two sides to that story, you know, and I don't feel like enough people are talking about all the good that comes out of streaming, you know.
Yeah, and if you don't want it on there and you're bitching about it, then take it down. It's
That's
just
right.
that simple. It's like
It
it's like being an adult. If you don't like something, move on. Don't have to add your 2 cents.
Right. Don't have to shit on it. It's okay. You don't have to use it. You can use Bandcamp. You can use SoundCloud. That's
There
fine.
you go.
I am very happily going to continue to use Spotify, because I get a lot of people who are like, "Ooh, I heard your stuff for the first time on Spotify," because so many people use it. And you know what? then they come to a show and then they buy merch, and that's how you make your money. So use it as a marketing tool, not a revenue stream. Everybody, all you musicians out there.
Every band that's been on my podcast that I interview, I'll go and add them to my playlist. In fact, I'll add your music to my playlist. So
thank you.
It gets streamed. It gets streamed. I don't know what, and I'm like you. I see all these people putting all these streams and shit. I'm like, going, man, if I even come close to that, I'd be so happy. But you still see them bitching about it. I'm like, why? You're getting more than me.
Because they think that all those streams should be revenue sources. But again, well, look at it different. Look at it like a marketing tool. Then all of a sudden your perspective completely changes on what Spotify is. Because for virtually free, maybe you can spend a little bit of money, promoting your Spotify stuff or whatever. But for virtually free, you can get, people to listen to your music how could they have done that 20 years ago? No radio station was playing anybody for free. You can't put your music in the record stores for free. So, let's recognize it's the wild, wild west. And I get it. We're trying to figure out how to make money as musicians. Like there's a lot to figure out in our current digital age for sure. But it's not all Spotify's fault that they came up with a cool business model and we like to use it. So
that's very true. That is very true. Annie, how can folks stay in touch with you? Pick up Sticks and Stones, all your releases, everything under the name of Trashy Annie. How can they do that?
Yes. So fortunately, nobody else had anything to do with the name Trashy Annie. So anytime you look up Trashy Annie, we are the thing that comes up, which is amazing. But yes, you can find the website is trashyannie.com. So super easy. You can buy merch on there. You can find all the social on there, videos, all the things. Under YouTube, we're Trashy Annie. The only thing where we're not Trashy Annie is on Instagram, and that's Trashy Annie Music. Partially because you put your screen name as Trashy Annie on some of those social platforms and you might get some different types of followers than you are wanting to. So Trashy Annie Music on Instagram, but everything else is just Trashy Annie, easy to find.
Everybody stick around. We got some great stuff coming up. You only hear these interviews right here on Bod's Mayhem Hour. Please get out and check out our YouTube page, and please subscribe to the YouTube page if you like what I'm doing, and I hope you guys and gals do. It means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to these musicians. And plus, sadly, it's like Spotify. If I don't get the big numbers, I'm not going to get these big ones on here anymore like I used to. But you know what? Fuck it. Subscribe to me if you like what I'm doing. That'll make me happy anyway. Check out Trashy Annie. Pick up their debut album, Sticks and Stones. Hey, give them a fair shot, and I guarantee you will like them. So, Annie, thank you so much for doing the interview, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
You're listening to Bod's Mayhem Hour.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.